Chair Trivet,
Here.
Vice Chair Stevens,
Here.
Mr. Fuller,
Here.
Mr. Carnifax.
Here. All right, we don't have any minutes to approve. We'll move on to board member announcements. Are there any board member announcements? Okay, we'll go on to reports then. I think that brings us to the financial report. I don't see Barbara in the audience. Does anybody have any questions about the financial report?
You can answer them all, right?
I'm gonna do my best, I guess. Any questions about the financial report? Okay, great. That's fantastic news. We'll move on to the Williamsburg Sports and Events Center operator report. Steve, you want to come up?
All right. Yep, ready whenever you are, Miss Dusty. So I have the privilege today of going ahead and presenting the first look at our kind of facility brand development, which would be the potential naming of the facility outside of it just being called the Williamsburg Sports and Event Center. So we've got a couple slides that we have 4 concepts that we're going to look at today. These are all concept art, so don't think that anything's got to be exactly like this. It's just kind of guesstimated color palettes based on what we've already seen with some of the things in the building. But we certainly want all of your feedback on that and want to kind of work through that. There we go. So once again, we have 4 concepts that we're going to look through here. All of them are trying to be a little bit edgy and modern, but also having a little bit of connectivity back to the historical nature of the region. Wrong way. There we go. First up, we have the Battlefield Sports Complex here. So each one of them will have a concept background, a little bit of a brand statement, and a facility tagline. One thing that I do want to mention with this is whether we go with a term like sports complex, sports arena, sports center, anything like that can be interchangeable as far as that goes. But for the purpose of just putting this together, they're all sports complex, just to have a generic name to them there. So our concept on this one was obviously just, the name Battlefield Sports Complex in Williamsburg, Virginia reflects the area's rich historical heritage, drawing inspiration from the significant battles that shaped our nation. This concept honors the past while providing a modern state-of-the-art facility for sports and community events, creating a bridge between history and contemporary athletic excellence. Our brand statements are typically all have a lot of similarity to them. There's a little bit of change depending upon what the name is, and then the facility taglines. All of them kind of play off of each other, but this is the one that we selected close because it's got Conquer the Field with the Battlefield name in it. Kind of made the most sense to this one. Show you the next one, and then we'll be able to pop back and forth if you need to. Next up, we have the Eagles Nest Sports Complex. So our concept behind this one, the Eagles Nest Sports Complex in Williamsburg, Virginia draws name and inspiration from the majestic eagles, symbolizing strength, vision, and excellence. Our concept design embodies these qualities, creating a facility where athletes can soar to new heights. Just as an eagle's nest is a place to grow and protection, our complex is a haven for athletes to develop their skills, to build camaraderie, and reach their full potential. Couple minutes on that one. Next up, Cardinal Sports Complex. The concept behind this one, the Cardinal Sports Complex is named in honor of the vibrant state bird, the cardinal, symbolizing vitality and pride. Our design concept incorporates imagery of the American dogwood blossom to create a facility that embodies the natural beauty and heritage of Virginia. This thoughtful integration of local symbols fosters a deep connection to the community, providing a picturesque and inspiring environment for athletes and visitors alike. And last but certainly not least, the Forge Sports Complex. The concept background here is the design concept behind the Forge Sports Complex, inspired by the idea of unity and collaboration. Our facility is designed to bring people together, fostering a sense of community and teamwork. Union Sports Complex, which we actually made a change on this one. I missed that one, my apologies. It was originally Union, and we changed it to Forge because we liked that kind of imagery better. That was the imagery that came with it. Embodies a spirit of togetherness, creating a welcoming environment where athletes and visitors can connect, compete, and celebrate as one. Those are the 4. We'd love to get your feedback, and I can certainly go back and show anything else if you need to look at it again.
What does the board think?
Can you go back to the first one?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can say that none of these work. That wouldn't be the worst thing, but
So how would this impact if we're looking at naming rights and things like that? How would this impact, would it impact if we got a corporate sponsor for the?
really doesn't impact a corporate sponsor as far as that goes coming into the play there, because the corporate sponsor would usually go above all of that regardless of that. So doesn't really play too much into there. Depending upon what they're looking for in other circumstances, it could, if they really want it to just be called the McDonald's Sports Complex, but that all depends on how much they're willing to bring to the table for the naming rights as well, right? So kind of depends on the situation. Steve, anything you'd add to that?
No, we.
Steve, you need to come to a mic because we're recording the meeting.
Yeah, I think Steve touched on that correctly. Oftentimes, if we get a naming rights partner that wants the full name, we're renaming and rebranding the facility.
Right.
That's just part of the process, though, because we need to name and brand it now so we can start marketing it. So if someone comes on the table with an offer to rename the complex, we'd go through that process. The other option for us is to do a deal where, it would be a buy somebody. So we would keep the Battlefield Sports Complex. In this case, sponsored by whoever that main sponsor could be. So there's another way we could go about it as well.
And that was always my anticipation, that if we had a prime sponsor, that's how it would be listed.
Yeah, as a presenting sponsor, essentially.
The blank Sports Center presented
So-
by, or
The Temple Battlefield Sports Complex. If Temple University was going to sponsor this thing, they would just be added to it, above it, or around it.
Correct.
Because I'd hate for us to do this and then come back and
Well,
change.
and I like that concept too, because if we all remember the Enron Stadium, that, it just was the Enron Stadium, and, so having
A
a
name.
primary name, and I like either the first or the last, of those four at least.
do you like
the first
Battlefield and
look.
Forge?
Yeah.
You got to
a
slide.
little
You got to
edgy.
slide with all four of them up at once.
I don't, because I didn't know which one might be the best type of logo to give the right impression there.
I do like the Cannons the best. Back to the Canon logo, the one on the top left seems very intense to me. The other one's, the one on the far right is pretty minimal.
Yep.
Either one of those work for me. But that would be my favorite of the group. I like the Eagle as well. It'd be number 2. No disrespect to St. Louis, but I'm not really all about the Cardinals. And the Forge, I just didn't really care much for the idea.
As a born and raised Chicagoan, the Cardinal one was a little hard for me to put together myself. Understood.
Well, and I think the battlefield touches all three of the localities,
It
because
does.
all three of them had battles in both Revolutionary and Civil.
I agree. I like the first one the best. I tend to shy away from the Eagle's Nest because that's what Jamestown High School calls themselves. So I don't see the significance there. But if I have to choose one, I lean to the Battlefield.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure. Again, I missed looking at these ahead of time. I'd gone through the package and I just didn't see that. So to see them today, the first one sits with me the best, the Battlefield. For me, still need some time to think about that and see if that fits, I guess, for lack of.
Absolutely.
What's the time frame are we looking for to make this decision? Like,
I think we've got some time,
yeah.
but
Because
as we.
I do think getting it out there and marketing and starting to book teams is important, and trying to come up with this in a quicker.
Certainly, finalizing the website and the social media channels from a marketing perspective is really the next phase of all of our development here in the plan for the complex. So coming up with the name is critical in that. It doesn't have to be done tonight type of scenario, but definitely want to make sure that it's something that everyone's comfortable with and feels it's the right move.
Is there, again, we certainly represent our localities, but we're 2 out of a board we represent and then a population we represent. Is there any public process for us to say we're putting together 3 or 4, put these out, and have other suggestions come back, or does that take us down to
We
strange?
could do that, but there's been a long list of naming exercises done publicly that didn't turn out too well. I'm sure everybody remembers Bodie McBoatface. So you'd have to be very careful about how we did that.
Okay.
I do think you've done a good job on all the taglines, regardless of which one. I think you've done a good job creating the tagline with each of the options.
Thank you.
So I mean, if we could narrow it down to two and then everybody kind of go back.
Well, do you want to see more than this? Or do you like this well enough that there's a winner here? You
I
do?
have a winner.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's fine. We can take some time. I mean, we can get back to Steve and
Certainly.
let him know what we want to do.
Well, do we
It was
eliminate?
it was not on the agenda today as an item even for an action. This was just sort of a report of what we've been working on. So
Well, do we eliminate?
that would be my
2 or 3 of
suggestion.
them
If
already,
there's
and
some
then-
that you don't, if there's some that we all can agree that we want to take off the list.
Robbie's got a good point that I didn't clue in on the Eagles nest. I mean, you know.
And I think Jamestown's colors are even green,
Cardinals, yeah.
so.
Just to make sure we're clear on the process, once we narrow down the name or to 2 names, we'll probably produce a lot more logo concepts. We just wanted to give you an idea of what they could look like today. And then once we get to a logo concept we like, we'll start to fine tune that with our graphic artist to really tie into the details that are important to the community. So we have some work to do even after this. I think the one ask I have is that we head into fall season here and we start hitting all the major shows where we meet with rights holders to start selling the complex. So really in the next 30 days, we should try to nail this down so that we can go to those shows with our brand and identity in place would be helpful.
So, you know, my thought is then I think we all like the battlefield, in agreement on that, is to bring that back with maybe some other options and maybe something different.
So take the Forge off the list, so we want to see a new concept in addition to the battlefield.
Yeah, other things with the battlefield and then something totally different than the other 3.
Yeah, I'm good
That
with
work
that.
for you?
It does. I like
Okay.
the battlefield as good as any of the 4.
Yeah.
I would like to see if there's another something, and I don't know what that is quite yet, so maybe there's not.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So we're going to see one completely new concept and then the battlefield back. And you're going to bring us hopefully some additional logo concepts in addition to that.
Absolutely.
With the goal to try to make a decision next month.
There we go.
Chairman, with regard to the complex sports center, does anybody have a thought about that?
The only thing I noticed quickly was it's sports and event center, or event, you know, and so do we want to keep the word event, or do we want to keep it sports? That was just my
true.
first thing is we've been out there has been events since part of the title of the facility, but do we want to keep events or do we want to keep it sports?
And without any vowels in there, you know, BSC is not, you know, an acronym that you can say. So, yeah, is there some, I always looked at that when we did the McReynolds Athletic Complex, you know, we got to Mac and it was named after a person who went by Mac. So that kind of made sense. So
Sure.
everybody calls it the Mac. I think if you ask people what the Mac stood for, most of them wouldn't know. Somehow if we can have
good
that
feedback.
short acronym,
Yeah,
sometimes helps.
I think, again, it's very interchangeable, so
Yeah.
I mean, you could honestly put Sports and Event Center back right up into that title off of that perfectly fine as well.
Yeah.
It's really just whatever preference of the board would be, what they feel most comfortable with, and especially how it flows with the name.
Okay.
Can you make sure we have that slide?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Any other
Questions,
thoughts on?
comments?
No? Okay, great. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, legal report.
Basketball ought to be coming out of the cannon.
We have been working diligently to get everything off the ground and going forward. We have, the bond financing will be finalized today. We'll have a report on that. And then we have been working on several agreements to affect the desires of the Historic Triangle Recreational Facilities Authority.
Robin, any other questions? All right, that brings us to the open forum. I do have 2 speakers cards, so I'll just remind the audience that if you come forward to address the board, please speak into the microphone, address the board directly, and we'll give you 5 minutes. If you could start with your name and address, that would be helpful. The first speaker card that I have is Ms. Pam McGregor.
Good afternoon. I don't intend to take my full 5 minutes here. It's really fun to be here. I'm grateful. I live here in James City County. I'm Pam McGregor with 3222 Deerfield Court, Williamsburg, Virginia. We live out in Fieldcrest. I am the executive director for the ARC of Greater Williamsburg, and our offices are actually over on Strawberry Plains Road. But what I have loved as I've watched this evolve is all of us working together, all of you working together. Because I know the ARC, who has been here since 1976, proudly serving adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities during that time, we would not be where we are today without collaborations, James City County Parks and Rec, William and Mary, all of the jurisdictions, and we serve all of those jurisdictions. So recently, I sent a letter to Mr. Trevette, and I copied John, and I know you got it, and that, you know, you guys are very busy people. And then I had a nice conversation with Morgan Cordell, and she invited me to come here today. And what's exciting about this complex is that it's new, it's fresh, it's serving everyone. And I just wanted to make sure that the voice of people, different abilities, is included in the concept and in the planning, because it would be pretty incredible in this community to be that inclusive sports complex that attracts all types of abilities, whether it's Special Olympics, Paralympics, senior citizens, or the people that I serve. And the last thing we want to do is build a complex and then have someone like me come and say, why didn't you build changing rooms that are accessible? Why don't we have adaptive equipment? You know, things like that. So while we're planning this and talking about it, we are very excited, but one of the things that kept my husband and I here in our family, my husband was a Navy JAG. We came down here in 2003, thought we'd do our tour of duty in Norfolk and leave. But we fell in love with this community. And part of that is because of the collaboration that I found working in the nonprofit world with the business side, with the counties, and with the college that is here in town. So I stand by ready to help in any way that we can or answer any questions. I provided in my letter a 2-sided little form that had some other accessible event complexes around the country, just for some ideas. I had a summer intern that helped me with that. But as I was saying earlier, the collaborations that we have, in particular with James City County Parks and Rec, we have just a dynamic fitness program, and huge fans of the tribe, and our clients are going to be very grateful, and seniors and people that need assistance in restrooms, things like that, will really be grateful that you thought about them when you were making your plans. So I thank you very much. My only comment on the battlefield is I'm not a big fan of guns. So maybe have colonial people dressed up in different sports attire carrying a pickleball paddle or something, but that's my 2 cents. But thank you all very, very much for the work you're doing together. As a community member, it means a lot to see this happening and seeing it happen in such a partnership. So thank you for your service to our communities.
Thank you, Ms. McGregor. Our next speaker is Robin Blitza.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Robin Bledsoe, 116 Augusta, 23188. As we continue our discussion on whether or not we will have a live performance venue, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. The City of Williamsburg graciously awarded my program, Advocates for a Live Performance Venue, money to pay for a feasibility grant. Excuse me. And to date, we have conducted our focus groups, and we had some great information out of that. I've spoken with the consultants, and they seem to be moving along quickly. They're right on time, which many of you probably already know. We are in the process of developing our fundraising plan so that we can explain to the community who we are, what we want to do, and how we hope to help pay for this venue in whatever manner that ends up being. Mainly, I just wanted to update you and say that we have conducted our focus groups. The feasibility study is moving along well. We anticipate it being done in the next couple of months, and I think we're going to have some really exciting information for all of you. And thank you again to the city for funding it. That's all I have.
Great, thank you, Ms. Bledsoe. That's all of the speakers cards that I had. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to address the board? Okay, I don't see anybody coming forward, so we'll close the open forum and move on to the closed session.
All right, well, I'd make a motion that the Board of the Historic Triangle Recreational Facilities Authority convene in closed meeting pursuant to VA Code Section 2.2, 3711A6, discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, or if made public initially, the financial interests of the authority would be adversely affected. And it's our executive director for the authority, position details as an employee or consultant initially. And also pursuant to VA Code Section 2.2-3711A29 for the purpose of discussing the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including the interview of bidders or offerors and the discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and it's related to naming rights or naming rights RFP. And also pursuant to VA Code Section 2.2, Section 3711A8, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by the authority on specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, and it's a right of use agreement and utility agreements with Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. So moved.
Second.
Dusty, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Hutton. Aye. Mr. Bellamy.
Aye.
Chair Trivett.
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Fuller.
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax.
Aye.
All right, the board will adjourn to closed session and return shortly.
Reconvene an open meeting.
Ms. Hutton. Aye. Mr. Bellamy.
Aye.
Chair Trivett.
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Fuller.
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax.
Aye.
And the motion to certify is that each member certified to the best of their knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meetings requirement by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting. And two, only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
I'll second.
Ms. Hutton. Aye. Mr. Bellamy.
Aye.
Chair Trivett.
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Fuller.
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. So that brings us to unfinished business, and the first item is presentation, discussion, and action regarding Resolution 2403, ratifying and confirming the terms of the pricing and sale of its recreational facility revenue bond, Series 2024, on August 8th, 2024, to Mesereau Financial. And I think that's going to be a joint presentation, probably, by Sands Anderson and Davenport.
Good afternoon. Again, Jimmy Sanderson with Davenport & Company, financial advisor to the authority. Good news. We priced our transaction last week, and I'm going to give you a little update on how that turned out. Just a second. Here we go. So, as you recall, when we met a couple months ago, I guess, we were planning to go to the rating agencies, discuss the transaction, get ratings, and then ultimately make a determination whether to price our transaction on a negotiated or competitive basis. We had those meetings in New York. Chair Trivett was there. The mayor of Williamsburg and the finance folks at Williamsburg were there as well. It was a very good meeting with Moody's and S&P. And we got those ratings back a couple weeks later. We published our notice of sale and official statement on July 24th. As a competitive transaction. Some of you may be familiar with that. That's where we put out the documents to underwriters, and they all just, on a certain date, will submit a bid. And that's what happened on August 8th. We received 5 bids from underwriters, and you can see them here. This is the TIC, the true interest cost. That's the way we evaluate those bids to determine the lowest bid to you. And we accept whoever provides us the lowest bid that meets the parameters of the notice of sale that was distributed to them. Mesereau was the winning bidder at a 405 TIC. You can see the cover bid about 9 basis points higher than that at 4.14, and then goes all the way up to Bank of America at 4.28. The market was a little crazy the week before we priced in our favor, actually. Interest rates dropped significantly. They came back a little bit in the beginning of the week, but overall we were lower than we were anticipating. I think our planning numbers, we were using a 4.5% interest rate was my memory, so we came in well below that. Just a reminder to you and those that may be listening, these interest rates are locked in for the life of the loan, and can only be changed if we were to decide to refund the bonds, for savings in the future if we wanted to. This is more detailed than you may have wanted, but a little bit of how this was shaked out. The way that we allow the underwriters to price, they submit the proposal to us. They may bid individual maturities going out through 2053. In this case, Mesero decided to do some term bonds to make larger blocks in 43, 50, and 53. And you can see that in the first, through 2047, mostly all 5% coupons. The yield is really what you're paying ultimately on the almost the last column on the right. And that's because the price of the bonds is set to the far right too. So the higher that price, it simply means that even though we're paying a 5% interest rate, the investors are paying you $1.06, or $106 for every $100 of par amount you're going to pay them back, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But again, these are locked in and set going forward. This is what we sort of a summary and pretty typical format. You see the far right, that's our principal and our interest now added together. Comes out still below that $4 million number that we wanted to keep the interest rate, the total debt service below. On the far right, far left, our sources and uses. So we issued $63,985,000 of bonds. There was a premium, so you recall the 5% interest rates, they paid us $106 on each $100 that we issued. That premium generated just north of $2.8 million in premium for us. Project fund, just north of $65 million as we planned. Cost of issuance, $605. The underwriter's discount is $831. All of those were included in that TIC. So the underwriters in this case, it was interesting, they paid themselves a little bit more, and I think it was a way for them to give us lower interest rates and maybe protect themselves a little bit as they work to sell off the bonds. I was telling the chair before the meeting that when we do a competitive transaction and underwriter submits the bid, they haven't sold all the bonds yet. It's really up to them to then go, it's no risk to us. In a negotiated transaction, what typically happens is the underwriters will have all of the bonds sold when we come to a deal to price the transaction. And in this case, the underwriters, as of the beginning of this week, still haven't sold $36 million of these bonds. That doesn't matter to us. That's their risk, up to them. Mesero is a very good firm. And one of the things that we were looking at was that underwriter's discount that they pay themselves protects them a little bit to allow them to sell the bonds over time, and maybe even change the prices to them. Again, that would be likely providing higher interest rates to future buyers than what we are actually paying. Again, on the bottom left, your average life is just north of 18 years. Your TIC is just north of 4%. So that I think that's a great outcome for the authority and your constituents. A little bit about what are next steps. Again, August 8th, we've priced the transaction. Those bonds are locked in. Again, Mesero is a company that we've worked with for lots of years. I think they're out of the Midwest, but they do a lot of this, buying bonds in the competitive market. We're going to mail our final official statement this week, so that goes out this week. We're planning to close the transaction on August 22nd. That's when proceeds will be available for the transaction. One of the things that we are going to do as well, we've suggested that we want to invest these bond proceeds as well to try to lock in our interest rate. You've probably heard about the Fed now seriously talking about lowering those short-term rates again. The monies are going to go into SNAP, which is a state program that invests bond proceeds for local governments. And that is earning right now, around 5%, great interest rate, but it's a daily rate. So as the Fed starts to adjust rates down, that rate will go down more. So we're gonna look at investing and laddering some investments out for a couple of years based off the draw schedule that that we've been provided, but that will allow us to at least guarantee some interest rates if short-term rates start to go down. We've locked in those rates. The other thing that we're going to look at, obviously, is making sure we can keep any arbitrage. So IRS rules don't allow us to keep monies above our ARB yield, our investments above our ARB yield, unless we spend the money quickly, which based off the draw schedule and that you have, we think you can be able to accomplish that. So depending on how that works out, we should be able to keep a good chunk of those interest earnings as well. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the wrap up. Again, we think it worked out terrifically for you, so congratulations. It was a good bond sale.
Any questions of Davenport?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right, our next item on the agenda is we got to take action. Sorry, it's a vote on this resolution.
This is Jesse. Introduce yourself.
Hey, how are you? Jesse Bausch. I'm also with SANS. I'm Dan because Dan is in Oregon this week. We did present for today's packet a resolution just last week. We started working through just getting closing papers done, all that kind of stuff. And just in the interest of kind of making sure that, because there's been a whole lot of documents that kind of underlie a whole lot of this stuff. And so we had proposed the motion that we have there just to kind of cover all those pieces. Since in the last couple of days working with Dusty, we kind of have all the backup we need for all the documentation and all the approvals. So at this time, I'm not recommending any action needs to be taken. We've authorized everything that needs to be authorized. So again, this was just kind of making sure if there's any stray things that we hadn't covered. So again, I'm recommending that we don't take that action today.
Okay, any objections from the board? All right. All right, that moves us on then to 9.2, presentation and discussion regarding the proposed operating budget and marketing plan for the Williamsburg Sports and Events Center. For that, we're going to turn back to Kemper.
So just a couple notes here as we kind of go through this part of the presentation. We've obviously pre-opening is going to span 2 fiscal years for the HTRFA. So, we've put it in just this first fiscal year to look at here. We'll obviously have the second one available as we get closer to that fiscal year presenting that, but this is for the first fiscal year of 24-25 there. We're going to talk a little bit of our property strategy and position in the market, talk about the budget, staffing, some of those staffing roles and responsibilities, and then we'll have a brief kind of overlap here between the business plan, marketing plan in this presentation, and there's actually a second one that goes into a little bit more depth. So we'll take a look at both of those and answer any questions that you may have. So obviously there's a lot on this, but we want to highlight our brand position, right? We've got a great location here in Williamsburg. We've got tourism already happening. We want to make sure that we're playing into that atmosphere already, utilizing that, building a greater tourism base as well, increasing our local programming throughout all the municipalities involved. So there's just a variety of things that we'll look to do in that. As we look at that, going again, local programming, promotion, coordination, execution, looking at local, regional, national tournaments and events, making sure that we have strong event operations, strong event programming and execution. Those are really critical things for us there. We want to make sure that we're hosting events, for other organizations, but also that we have creation of events, that we own the entire operation, we own that event, whether it be basketball, volleyball, pickleball, what have you, right? So we want to make sure that we own some of that event as well. Making sure that we're staying focused on our marketing and our tourism, because we want to continue to drive revenue in all types of different areas, not only at the facility, but in the economic impact space as well, driving additional tourists into the market there. We want to make sure that we're leveraging our industry relationships with our national, regional tournaments and nationally recognized clubs. As many of you are aware, our sister company, 3 Step Sports, is the largest aggregator of youth and amateur content in the country when it comes to sports clubs and events. So we're going to be utilizing that relationship there to help put in immediate events at the facility as soon as we open the doors in June of 2026. That's the plan. And obviously tracking. We're going to do a lot of data tracking of the sports tourism events, not only within ourselves, but in partnership and collaboration with various entities here within the local area, like Visit Williamsburg, the Hotel Motel Association, so on and so forth, making sure that we're kind of tracking all that, finding the right ways to go ahead and ensure that we've got the most penetration going on. So, in this first fiscal year, unfortunately, because the building is not there yet, we don't have a whole lot of revenue going on in year one, so I apologize about that, but we'll fix that once we get into operation there. So in the first year here, we were a little heavy on the expense side. Operating expense about $157,600, payroll at about $160,000 there. That's going to be your salaried, hourly, taxes and benefits all included in that for a total expense of about $317,965. You've got your EBITDA there. There's a management fee for Kemper Sports, which puts you on net income at $467,965 on the negative on that one. A couple of key considerations there. The payroll numbers inclusive of our 3 full-time positions, the general manager, sales and marketing director, and the sports manager, with all of those looking to start in January of 2025. Marketing, the full marketing budget across both seasons, if you will, is around $200,000. But in this first kind of fiscal year, it's about $79,000 there. And that's kind of how it breaks down. $49,000 in the promotions, advertising, trade shows at $8,000, online advertising, website at $20,000, and then special events at $2,000. It's a very large document there, and we'll get this so you guys have it and you can magnify it and do some different things with it so you can see all that there. But that's just that in its true, kind of detailed income statement type of format. Talking about staffing a little bit, again, we're looking to have everyone kind of come on board really in January of 25. So this September, October timeframe is when we're going to start the launch process for doing that. We'll do a national search for all 3 of these positions, looking to get the best candidate possible. Certainly local candidates are acceptable as well. We love getting local candidates, but we will do a national search to make sure that we have the right candidate available there. But the general manager, sales and marketing manager, and sports manager, again, are the 3 positions that we will look to hire first within there. Getting into a little bit of detail there, your general manager is going to assist in the operational facility layout and design, fiscal management of the facility, staff development, brand in the community, equipment and technology integration, and then stakeholder communication. So they'll be in charge of obviously doing this type of meeting with me on the go forward once we have our GM in place. Sales and marketing manager, pretty self-explanatory in a lot of different ways there, but developing the sales and marketing strategies, brand development, conducting market research and analysis on a regular basis, generating leads for the complex, creating our promotional campaigns, establishing the pricing and partnership agreements, community engagement and public relations, and partnership and sponsorship development. The key roles of that position. And the sport manager, in addition to assisting with all those other things, program development and planning, prepares the facilities and equipment as we get closer and closer to completion, making sure that everything's in the building and where it needs to be operational. Community engagement and outreach as well, continuing to generate leads, and then engage the tournament and event directors about future bookings. This position also typically, they have the most connection with your other tournament operators, your leagues, your clubs in the area, so they're helping drive that kind of business in there. Highlighting a couple of things from our marketing plan here, kind of website development. Obviously, our naming is a critical piece there, so within the next 30 days, we'll have the naming, which will then lead to the actual website being branded at that point. Right now, we have a wireframe, which you can see a sample of that wireframe on the right side there of the website. So the wireframe is already built and ready to go. We're just obviously waiting for our naming to get official, and then we can go ahead and go live with that. But in doing our website, making sure that we have a really good design with easy navigation. No one wants to spend a lot of time on a website anymore clicking around, so we want easy navigation to get to everything that we need. We want to make sure that we're creating really compelling content and have a lot of engagement opportunities with it. That's high performing, has great security, good optimization when it comes to CEO. We want to be the top thing when people click for sports here in this historic triangle area. Make sure that we have a great profile for our Google business. And then obviously, like I said, launching our website and then continuous development and content is really critical there, which we'll have certainly during the construction phase in working with, Todd and MEB, the pictures on a regular basis, the time-lapse camera, some of those things will all be a part of our marketing strategy to kind of show the growth and get the excitement going even further. Obviously, creating that visually appealing logo and key brand assets, which we talked about a little bit earlier in the other portions, is critical there. So once we kind of fine-tune these to these final 2, we'll get some different logos involved. We'll get in some different color patterns and palettes and different things like that, and really create those brand boards and logo boards going forward. Sponsorship will be strategic certainly for this facility, and it'll be a great opportunity for us to drive revenue as well as highlight so many various different partners in and around this area, regionally and nationally and locally. So getting our sponsorship pages together with inquiries, getting our tiered packages, as we've discussed a little bit, that'll all fall in line with our sales and marketing campaign. We will look at naming rights, as we kind of mentioned in some other capacities there. In addition to naming the facility, naming areas of the facility is an opportunity, naming events that are being held within the facility is an opportunity, title sponsors for different things here and there, and being involved in our social media. One of the big things that sponsors look for is activation. How do they get activated in the complex, or how do they get access to all those bodies that are coming through? So working with them in a variety of different ways to allow them to get those activation points is a really successful strategy. We use a variety of kind of metrics and KPIs to kind of track everything. One thing that will be a part of this as we get the website up and running is we will show a dashboard at every one of these meetings to kind of show what's going on from a social media and a website perspective, how it's growing, how the database is growing, all of those types of things like that. This is a sample of what that kind of dashboard would look like. This is for another complex, the land at Saraland, as you can kind of see on the right there. But it'll show your total visitors, how long they're staying on pages, how many clicks, all these kind of direct things. And then as we get closer to where we're actually in the sales process, it'll track everything that's going into the sales funnel as well, and how much revenue is actually being generated off of those visits to the website and so forth and so on. Shows you your ROI that way. That is it on that one.
All right, thank you, Steve. Any questions from the board? And I'll just say that, I think the intent here is this is a contractual requirement to have this material provided to us by Kemper. What I would propose we do is I'm going to ask our finance folks to work with Kemper to turn this into a version of a municipal document that we're all familiar looking at, and see how it affects what we've been looking at in terms of our own budget, and let that be the standard, and maybe we bring that back for adoption next month with Barbara's recommendation. There was no intention of an action item today, just that we get this report, get you the information, and then you've got 30 days if you see something you want questioned or something you need answered. We've got 30 days to get it. Any initial thoughts though for Kemper?
Sounds like a good plan.
Can I ask a question about?
Pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting.
What's your vision working with Visit Williamsburg, and how are those two going to be connected as we get the marketing? And that's something I know we've talked about both. I've talked to both groups about, and so
Sure.
I just want to make sure there's a connectivity. And
Absolutely. We definitely want to make sure that there's connectivity. There's a couple ways. Steve mentioned it earlier. You're coming into the conference season, right? The selling season and the conference season. We go to those conferences as Kemper Sports. Visit Williamsburg goes to those conferences. Others go to those conferences, typically individually, right? We're going to lay these sales and marketing strategies over top of each other to see where we're at, where there's synergies, where we can support each other across the board there, and really continue to push, the entire area as a whole. But ultimately, we want to make sure that there's good synergies, because we want to make sure that we don't miss anything, right? We want every single event we can. We got 52 weekends to fill every year, so we want to have all those working together. Looking at all the things that may be coming through the CVBs, looking through things that are coming through our normal kind of sports industry channels, things that may be coming through, because we're a multi-unit space, right? So while basketball is certainly a big deal and volleyball is certainly going to be a big deal, there is a banquet area, if you will, or a large, multi-purpose space in there. The entire courts themselves could, in theory, be transferred into an additional conference type of space, if it needed to be. So there's a lot of multi-functionality to it.
I guess that was my point. Make sure you're communicating it. If only one can go to this instead of having 2 to 1 and missing one, that's kind of my thought, is
Absolutely.
Make sure we capitalize on all of those opportunities.
Well, and the great part about working together like that is this is the situation where, someone calls us, right, because it just happens to show up on their website first, and they say, we need this much space, and we go, oh, we don't have that. It doesn't mean we don't have that asset somewhere within the area, right? So kind of working together to be sure that we have that kind of synergy is critical.
I think to that end too, John, the MEB and Clark Nexum have all said that they are considering attending these same conferences to promote their work, I'm sure, but
Yes.
also through that promotion of work will be our sports center. So I think at least in the next 2 years, we're going to be well represented at these
I would agree,
conferences.
very much so.
I did have a question. Can you go back to slide 1?
Good there.
Okay, next slide. There we go.
This one, yes, sir.
Yeah, at the bottom, it says data tracking of sports tourism efforts. So what's the baseline? Can you talk a little bit about, is it pre-COVID baseline? Is it last 12 months baseline? Well, how are you going to measure that against what?
Certainly, Steve. He's our sports tourism guru, so.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, we're working against our own baseline, right? So the first thing we're looking at is just how we're progressing year over year. We'll look at what we looked at well, not what we looked at, but what you guys had done previously when you were deciding to do this, on what the anticipated economic impact was going to be for the project. Really, we're measuring based on that expectation. As we go through and we start to define key performance indicators that are more important to you all and the success of all the organizations within the area, we'll better define how that baseline goes forward. What we track typically here is visitations, right? So really direct spending in the market. So you'll see us tracking number of teams to number of players, which then multiplies to the number of spectators that come to those players, and we'll get to the overnight stays. And we'll do that either through software. When they're booking, we'll have to work closely with the hotel motel associations and the hotels to get that data to make sure it's accurate. And then we'll give you monthly reporting on how that is tracking versus what was promised, or at least what we thought initially. We'll give you historical data, and we'll compare it to industry averages often. So we can give you the history of how it's been going nationally, and then we'll compare it year over year on what the rest of the industry is actually experiencing as well, to see how we're comparing. The one thing about this industry in general is that it's pretty new. It's in its infancy. So the availability of data is less than maybe in our golf business or something like that, where there's a storied history and course data. But we do the best we can to collect that data, and the industry is starting to catch up as well.
In addition to that, I think one advantage that we have with this facility is the timing of it. With all of the focus, particularly in Williamsburg, on the 250th, the local 250th committee has been working with Visit Williamsburg and the Hotel Motel Association on a process of measuring performance of all of the 250th efforts. And so for that exercise, we're going to be producing a quarterly report. We think right now it's up to the committee really, but we're going to be making that recommendation that's going to look back beginning, I think, in 2018. And there's a whole host of metrics that we've identified with the help of our partners that will be important in measuring success related to everything that we're doing to promote 250th. And because that 250th committee has designated this project a legacy project as part of that commemoration, it'll be included as part of that rationale. So it won't be split out, but at least we'll have some good indicators of what we're doing locally.
Thank you. That's kind of stuff exactly I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's some neat stuff out there too, and some of this is manual work, but we'll also pull Placer AI data now, which it basically is grabbing data from people's cell phones, which is scary but real. So we can tell how many people are actually coming to the facility, where they're coming from, where they're going to eat, where they're staying, how they're entertaining themselves. So we'll have some really good data that actually helps shape our future marketing efforts, which will be neat to have.
Yeah. And we have a shell version of our 250th report that we're going to present to our committee, and once it's been looked at by them and approved, I'll share the format of that with the board. Any other questions for Kemper?
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 10.1, which is consideration and action regarding authorizing the chair to execute a right of use agreement with the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation for utilities associated with the Williamsburg Sports and Events Center. So this says Sans Anderson, but I can cover it. As we complete construction on the Sports and Events Center, obviously one of the things that we have to worry about is how are we connecting the utilities associated with the center to the private utilities that run in and around the Colonial Williamsburg Visitor Center. In as many cases as we can, we're going to try and engineer our way out of that connection, just because it makes it easier for us and connect directly to the city of Williamsburg's utility lines. But that's obviously not something we can do in every case due to expense primarily. Two cases that we know of for sure are sanitary sewer and stormwater. And so in those two cases, we'll be coming to the board asking for the ability to connect under a user agreement. And that's what's on the agenda today. We've negotiated this, I think, to be in our best interest. It only is for stormwater. There's a couple of references in the existing document that's on the agenda for sanitary sewer, but those will be stricken out before the final version is signed. And so I would ask the board to consider approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Ms. Hutton? Aye. Mr. Bellamy?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Fuller?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
If there's no other business before the board, that brings us to adjournment.
To adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Hutton? Aye. Mr. Bellamy?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Fuller?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.